Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jai Gaura Premanande. वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय।
Hare Krishna, liebe Gäste, liebe Devotees, ein schönes Willkommen zu unserem Krishna-Tempel hier in Zürich an diesem Sonntag. Hare Krishna, dear guests, dear devotees, a very big welcome to our Sunday program here at our Krishna Temple Zurich. Is someone here for the first time? Okay, then everyone is accustomed to our Sunday program. So, special welcome to everyone. And for today's talk, we are now very happy to invite here His Grace Akhandadhi Prabhu. Please welcome him with a big Hari Bol. Akhandadhi Prabhu is originally from Northern Ireland, and he came into contact with Krishna consciousness in 1973 with the books of Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhu is also a direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna movement. And Prabhu has been engaged in various services, various places. Just to mention one, especially Bhaktivedanta Manor. That's a temple, one of the most successful temple of the world, where Krishna consciousness is being practiced, and Prabhu has served there for many years, and especially also as a temple president. And Prabhu engaged in other projects and agricultural communities, etc. And one of his fields is also sharing Krishna consciousness with the academic and scientific fields, especially on the topic of consciousness. There is even a YouTube channel called Prabhu is explaining different aspects from the Vedanta and comparing it to the modern science. And today Prabhu is going to speak on Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. Is it? So a special topic, being oneness and different. And as you can see, Prabhu has prepared already something. And before we start, just two things. Braucht jemand eine deutsche Übersetzung? Okay, and then I request everyone, please, to come forward. Please come closer. Then I wish you a happy Sunday. Hare Krishna.
We're on now? Yes. Yeah. Do a little lower, yeah. See over it. Hare Krishna. Very pleased to be invited to speak this afternoon. Big honor here in Zurich to be asked, so it's a big responsibility. So before we start, we'll chant a little together to get us very nicely attuned to the mood. Jaya Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Vijayavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Haribo, 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 Haribo. Nitai Gaur, Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Paramahans Pararajakacharya, Ashtothara, Sri Srimad His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Iskon Sanstapikacharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Gornatai Ki, Sri Jagannath Subhadra Baladeva Ki, Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. I have been given a topic. Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. This is a Sanskrit term for the particular philosophy that helps us understand who we are and who we are in connection with everything else, and particularly who we are in connection with the source of our existence, God. There are many different viewpoints arising from those who are followers of Vedic texts, and they have different traditions, different lines of teachers, different commentaries on some of the scriptures. And they vary in different ways, from ideas of monism, where the understanding is that everything is simply one. It's all just oneness. Ideas of Dvaita, dualism, where there is God and then there is us, and we're completely different. And then there are ideas of Beda Beda. Beda means difference. Abeda means non-difference or oneness. So Achintya Beda Abeda means the philosophy of the simultaneous oneness and difference between everything in existence. Now that might sound contradictory. It might even sound like sitting on the fence. Are you a monist or a dualist? No, I'm not. I'm neither. It may sound like we're sitting on the fence and not committing. But what I hope to demonstrate is that this understanding of Beda Beda is the only logical understanding that can exist, that can be applied to our understanding of who we are and our relationship with existence. And frankly, the only proper understanding that really emerges from the Vedic texts. And here we are in front of Gaurnatai. It was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who helped to synthesize so many of the ideas that had been within the Vedic text and had been taught by different teachers. He brought them together and showed actually that this is the real unification of all Vedic knowledge. Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. So very important stuff. And we'll try and keep it a little fun and a little not too dense in philosophical terms. And I thought I'd start by appreciating a journey that I was on, and I think is shared by many, many of those who are on the spiritual path. As was mentioned, I'm from Northern Ireland, and if I actually spoke in the dialect of my hometown, Belfast, you would not understand, or rather, you'd understand much, much less than it is today. But Northern Ireland in those days, and we're going back into the 60s and 70s, was a very God-fearing place. Oh, yes. Everyone went to either church or chapel. Church if you were a Protestant, chapel if you were a Catholic. Everyone, on Sunday, everyone. There was one or two people we knew who didn't. And they didn't go because they were English. And we knew the English were all atheists. But not Northern Ireland. The only problem was, in this wonderful God-fearing place called Northern Ireland, the Protestants and Catholics were fighting one another. But they weren't fighting over religion. Let's make that clear. This wasn't a fight over religion. It was fighting over power, economics, access to all the opportunities that the other had. So it was, the lines were drawn according to which faith or church you believed in. But the fighting was it wasn't religious. It was just typical human greed and exploitation, at work, and ultimately it causes trouble and violence. But that was the situation I was growing up in. So I was going to church every week, and I actually appreciated it. I liked the spiritual ideas. I used to get into trouble discussing things with the minister and the Bible class teacher. She would say, talking about life after death, and I would be asking questions. Well, you're talking about life after death, but what about life before birth? She'd, never thought of that. And I was thinking, well, yeah, surely that's a good question. Isn't it a good question? If we're eternal, does that mean just in the future? What about the past? So we would ask questions. And then I kind of felt myself, and I suppose I thought I was being very smart, very spiritual, kind of moving away from this idea that, there's one big God who created everything and we're just down here, we're just meant to worship him and that's it. It didn't feel very attractive. And you could start to see all the problems that were there in those who said they were following a religious tradition. So I started to get a little put off by everything. Now, it was my uncle who was the minister of the church, actually. He was a bigwig in the Presbyterian church. And so we were very much involved. But I just kind of felt myself moving out of it. And I started to read Indian philosophy. And that's where I was getting these ideas about reincarnation and things like that. That made much more sense, that you had more chances, getting things right than just one life and you were either condemned, heaven or hell. So then I started kind of getting into this idea that, all these differences, Protestant, Catholic, there was other wars, America and Vietnam was going on. There was all sorts of, flashpoints and differences, rich and poor, communist, capitalist, still a big thing in those days. And just all these differences between people. That's what's causing the problem. If only we were more together, more united, saw things in the same way and actually appreciated. We're not so different after all, We're all humans. We're all, sharing this planet. We should be as one. And then understanding that actually this is a philosophy that maybe you can take further. Not just thinking that, we're all one as humans, but what about all life? Aren't we all one in that respect? And isn't The universe, aren't we connected with that? We're products of it. Our body is stardust, as we were told. Are we one with the universe? And where does that come from? God. Maybe we're all at one with God. That would be the unity. That would solve all the problems. That would be real religion. That was my journey. How many of you recognize that journey in yourself? Not that you had to come from Northern Ireland, but that you kind of felt yourself moving away from maybe what was traditional monotheism into something that was much more a sense of unity and oneness. I think it's quite a typical journey. I was reading the stories of our great acharyas in the line of Vaishnavism, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, and Imbarka. All of them went through this path. All of them were initially brought up in traditions where they kind of transcended typical standard religious worship to come to a higher spiritual understanding of monism. But then they understood that they had to transcend even that, because monism doesn't address the questions. It's a stepping stone. It's the first station as you get on the train of Vedanta. It's the first station. Don't get off at the first station. It's not your destination. There's more to go. So I was in this mood of oneness and really, getting into it. Oh my God, I was getting into it in meditation and, reading up everything. And then one day there was a knock at the door. And this is in a side street in the outskirts of Belfast. It was Easter Sunday, actually, 52 years ago. And there was a Hare Krishna devotee. He'd been trying to sell books in town, but he didn't realize that on Sundays, all shops were closed in Northern Ireland. All shops, all businesses, everything shut down because that was God's day. They would even lock up the swings in the park so that your kids couldn't go and enjoy it. This kind of almost totalitarian religiosity was going on. Very hard to identify. So this poor devotee, he'd been trying to visit and find people in the town and couldn't find them. So he took a bus out into the outskirts and was knocking on doors, and he wasn't having a good time. He wasn't being well received there, and he had saffron robes and tilak, shaved head, knocking on doors, trying to kind of tell people something about a religion that wasn't their own. He was not faring well. But he knocked on my door, and I was alone in the house at the time. So I opened. Wow. And I understood where he was coming from because of, things I'd been reading and studying. And so we had a great chat. We had a really deep chat for half an hour or 45 minutes or so. And then he gave me a book. This one here, Upanishad. Not this particular printing, it was an older version. It was larger, it was bright pink. It had a drawing of Mahavishnu on the front, but it was just transcendently radiant. It was absolutely beautiful. And he left that with me, and I gave him the magnificent amount of 50 pence towards it. And he was, since it was his only sale of the day, he was very pleased. Anyway, just opening this one. This verse that's on the board is the invocation mantra from the Upanishad. And this was an important book translated by Srila Prabhupada, along with his Bhagavad Gita and his work on the Srimad Bhagavatam. He wanted to do this because it is a very succinct set of mantras which help to establish our understanding of who we are and what is our relationship with God. And Upanishads are these are the philosophical texts of the Vedic scriptures. A lot of the Vedas deal with rituals and other practical things, but the Upanishads, that's the philosophy bit. And the Isha Upanishad, this is the Upanishad of Isha, that which is the source of all existence, Ishvara, the center of the circle, God. And this verse, and it goes like this. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. Let's try that again together. That was great. Om Purnam Ada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. Now, what's this verse all about? This is the one that changed me completely. And I'll read the translation and then we'll go back over the words and dissect it. Because it says, the personality of Godhead is perfect and complete. And because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself. Because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. So when you see this word Om, this Om is the vibration that represents the source of all existence. This is described in the Vedanta Sutras and all the Upanishads. Janmadyasha Yataha, that from which everything else comes. You know, to think of God as this personality or that personality or even the creator can lead us into trouble. What we have to identify as our destination or our target for attention is that which is the source of all existence. And that source, that we call the absolute truth. The origin, the ultimate, the thing from which everything else comes. And that is represented in that sound vibration, Om. Right? Now, in this verse, Prabhupada identifies that source as the personality of Godhead. Now that, some people may think he's taking a liberty there. He's extending it. But that is the understanding. And it goes like this. Everyone, philosopher, scientists, theologian, whoever, understands that it has to be something from which everything else comes. There has to be some starting point from everything. And the question is that starting point, is that origin conscious or not conscious? Inert. Many who are of the physicalist or materialist mentality will say, no, there must, whatever started the universe and everything else that's beyond it, it's just physics. It's just something physical, inert. It's not conscious. It's not anything. That will be their point of view. Fine. If that's your point of view, then please explain how something that is inert, non-conscious, gives rise to all of us who are conscious. And that's why the argument over consciousness is so big, so heavy, so emotional for scientists, because it represents what is happening at the source. Because if you cannot explain how consciousness can arise from matter, then you have no reason to suppose that the original source of all existence is non-conscious, inert. You cannot say that. Because if that source is inert, how do you get consciousness coming from it? Doesn't work. So that allows us to suggest that a more logical explanation for the source is that I'm conscious and the source is conscious. Consciousness can certainly give rise to consciousness. Consciousness could give rise to things which are inert, but inert cannot give rise to consciousness. So that supreme source is conscious. And what does conscious mean? It means being the I. Now that's a tricky one in Vedanta philosophy, because we're told so many times in spiritual life we've got to get rid of this concept of I. It's the cause of all our troubles. No. You cannot get rid of being the experiencer. Consciousness means being the experiencer. What you can get rid of is false notions of who you are. And if you have false notions of who you are, you're likely to do false things, foolish things. You're likely to look for your benefit or your pleasure in the wrong place and get yourselves in all sorts of trouble and mess up all your relationships. But it's not getting rid of the I that the experiencer. You cannot do that. All you can do is get rid of the false notions of yourself, your false aspirations, your false goals, your false desires. Those you can deal with. And we'll come a little bit more into that. So, the Supreme Source is conscious and personal. Therefore, Prabhupada is perfectly right to say the personality of Godhead is being described in this verse, Om. Purnam, beautiful word, Purnam. Prabhupada uses two words in English to try and capture that. Perfect and complete. You know, now just complete isn't quite there, perfect isn't there. Perfect and complete. Which means it doesn't need anything else. It's completely, it's perfect in itself. It requires nothing else. It's independent. And it's not resting and requiring anything else to make it more perfect or more complete. That's the source. Okay, that's good. But that isn't the only thing, you see. If we think, well, that's the oneness. There it is, you see. Vedanta is talking about the oneness. The Supreme is just perfect and complete and there's nothing else. Yeah, but wait a minute. You and I know that there's something else. We're here. I'm looking at you and we're looking at each other and, you know, there's differences. So whatever exists must be perfect and complete, but it also has various or variety of objects in it. Each of us. So that we have to deal with. So this verse helps us. So because the Supreme is completely perfect, all emanations from him, Purnat means from the Supreme. We get also Purnams. We get perfect and complete units emanating from the Supreme. Now that's amazing. So the Supreme can be total and complete and yet produce other units which are also perfect and complete in themselves. Who are we talking about there? Us. We're not the only perfect and complete things emanating from Krishna, but one of the perfect and complete types of emanations that come from are the individual souls, you and me. We are complete in ourselves. That is the amazing thing about what we call the Atma. That which is activating this body, that which is filling it full of consciousness. And it's the bit of us that is doing the experiencing. Yes, we're using our body and our senses and our brain and our mind to gather all the information about the world and process it and give us an understanding of what we're seeing around us. But the actual experiencer, that's the Atma. That is a perfect and complete unit of consciousness. And just like God, in one sense, it cannot be broken into further parts. It's It's a unit in itself. It is the quantum of Purnam consciousness. So all emanations from him, from the jivas, and also Prabhupada says this phenomenal world, which could be unpacked in a minute, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. We're a complete whole. But we have a relationship. We are produced from the supreme complete whole. And then it says, because Krishna is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. Purnasya Purnam Adaya means, although there are many Purnams coming from, belonging to the Purna, Krishna, Adaya, which means emanate, Krishna remains Purnam. Eva means certainly. Avashishyate means it is not diminished in any way. So this is weird mathematics. We've had the Supreme One and can produce many individual ones and still not adding to it. It's still the complete one. And even though you take so many little ones from the one, it's still the one. This is achincha. This is this word. It's almost inconceivable how this can be. But this is the nature of the circle. Krishna is both the circle and the center of the circle and everything within that circle. That is Ishvara, Krishna. And we are individual Purnam pieces within that circle. Can we ever become the supreme? Well, many philosophies try and say, yes, that's the goal. To merge your individual consciousness into the consciousness of the supreme whole. And therefore you become one with God in that way. And that's the oneness that is promised. Now, it unfortunately doesn't make any sense. It sounds nice, and I know I bought into that. I really did. But then it began to be explained, as I delved deeper. I realized actually there's a lot of issues about that. If we have the potential for merging ourselves into God, then why are we not God already? How did we get to be non-God? How did we get the status of being separate from the whole? Why did that happen? And there's various arguments used. Some people say, well, it's Maya, it's illusion. Somehow or other, we are the bits of God that is under illusion, and therefore not realizing we're God, you see? But wait a minute. I thought you said everything is one. Everything is just God. What's illusion? Where does illusion come from? How can God have illusion? That doesn't make any sense. How can God be overcome by illusion? That doesn't make any sense. Sometimes instead of Maya, they say avidya. Ignorance has overtaken. And that means that we're all in ignorance because we haven't come to realize our actual nature as God. But it's the same problem. How did God become overcome in this way? Doesn't make any sense. So this idea of oneness actually is more problematic. We cannot claim that everything is one, because it's obviously not one for you and me. And even if you try and explain away why it's not one or why it doesn't seem to be one by raising issues of things like Maya and avidya, you are destroying the concept of oneness in that process. You are contradicting your oneness in making up excuses for why we're not experiencing oneness. It's a contradictory, incomplete idea. And therefore, we cannot just buy into this idea that everything is all just one. But neither is everything just all different. That there is God up there and we're down here and there's no connection, relationship. That's not what's been said here either. Actually, what's been described in this verse is that we are very closely, very intimately connected with God as the source and us as a product, a Purnam product. One of the examples that the Acharyas, teachers in our line give, is the idea of the fire, a blazing bonfire. And the sparks are being fired up into the air. And in one sense, the sparks in the fire all make up the fire. But there's a source to the fire, and the sparks are individual. And if those sparks go too far away from the fire, what happens? They become duller and extinguish. The fuel may not be used up, but somehow or other their energy being separated from the fire has dulled them. But if that spark falls back into the fire, it can be reignited again. And that's kind of the process that we're in. We are permanent sparks of the supreme fire. So this idea is that we are simultaneously one with God, in that we are conscious, we are personal, we are eternal. Those are all the good bits, right? And God is personal, eternal and conscious. But there's a big difference, I had, until I got my Irish, I was a British subject for many years, still a good joint thing. So as a British subject, I can say I'm British. And King Charles, he's British. Okay, if King Charles is British and I'm British, then maybe a kingdom, king asked me, he's British, I'm British, therefore I'm the king. No, it doesn't work like that. So you have all these verses, aham brahmasmi, I am Brahman. True. You are Brahman. That's what this verse is telling you. You are a Purnam, a complete unit of Brahman. But that doesn't make you the supreme Brahman, now or in the future. It means that you have a connection, a relationship, maybe even a responsibility. And maybe there's a responsibility in both ways. The king's meant to look after us. We're meant to kind of be, good citizens for the king, So we are Brahman. We are definitely Brahman. That is the nature of consciousness. We are part of the complete Purnam emanations from the total. But Krishna is the total. Now this is the oneness and the difference. And as I said, this is not a paradox. It is not a contradiction. It is actually the most logical aspect of philosophy. I'll give you a little example. Science could not exist without mathematics. Isn't that right? Pretty well science depends on mathematics. Maths is called the queen of science. It has a different logic to it. Actually, maths is a branch of philosophy, but it's a branch of philosophical logic that is very, very precise because of its rules, right? Mathematics depends entirely on the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda. Did you know that? Mathematics relies completely on it. I shall demonstrate. I'm showing you all of this, and I'm asking you, how many? One. How many? The next question is, how many of what? Isn't it? You have to ask yourself. Because one is right. There is one plate of fruit. There's 2 types of fruit. There's 3 oranges. There's 4 apples. There's a total of 7 fruits. and a total of 8 objects. So how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8. Or however, right? So that's hopeless. In mathematics, you can't just keep counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You know, you have to group. You have to say what is the set of things that you are working with, don't you? A set, that's the Sanskrit concept of samanya. I'm grouping things that are the same. I'm saying my group is oranges. They have the same qualities. So now I can say how many of this group. 1, 2, 3. Or apples. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in mathematics, you need 2 things. You need individuality so that you can assign numbers. 1 is different from 2, is different from the third, and so on. Individuality exists. But at the same time, in order to count them, we have to group them. So that's a beta. Beta, a beta. You know, difference and non-difference. So mathematics relies on it. All equations are beta. E equals mc squared. Is energy the same as mass? Well, yes and no. It's similarly the same, but simultaneously different. Everything is one and different. You know? So this is our relationship with God. We're simultaneously one with God in quality, in all the features that are related to being Brahman, being spiritual, being spirit, being conscious, being eternal, being conscious, being aware, and even to the point where we also have free will. Independence. Wow. That is an amazing aspect. That these Purnam, these complete units emanating from Krishna, are so Purnam, they have their own free will and independence. That's the philosophy of Vaishnavism. I was reading Bhaktivinoda Thakur talking about this in his book, Jaiva Dharma, the other day. And he was making the point, if Krishna hadn't given each of us free will and independence, we might as well have been inert objects. Because without free will to be able to express what you want, how you want to be, you know, how you want to relate to all other things, without that freedom, you might as well be a piece of wood. So, Swarat, each of us has independence and free will. So the question is how to engage free will in our relationships with others. Because now we're recognizing that in one sense, we're all in this room, Atmas, embodied in this life. So in that respect, we're all one. We have a commonality, but I'm not you and you are not me. And no matter, you know, there's a lot of songs that used to be there. I am you and you are me, and what I see is you as me, you know. Or was it John Lennon said, you know, I am you and you are me, and we're all together, whatever, you know. All these nice kind of ideas. And in one sense, we can be all together. But that's not by getting rid of our individuality. It's by connecting our individuality in an amazing mood that's called service and love. That's the way for unity. That's the way for unification. That's the way for oneness. It's merging our interests with the interests of another. That becomes the unity. You know? That I suspect that many who kind of are on a transcendental, or see themselves on the spiritual transcendental path, have a view that, well, love is a great thing, but the real love is when I actually become absolutely as one in consciousness with another person. Now, if you think that means merging, that's not love. That just means that you have taken over this other person in some way, and you no longer have to argue with them about this and that. There's no longer any chance that you will disagree, you know. And maybe for those who have been hurt in love, and it's hard to kind of exist in this world without getting a little let down in love through one's family, through one's beloved, you know, kids, whatever. Whoever we kind of have loved in this world, I'm sure there's times we've each felt a little let down in that. But we shouldn't give up on it. And in many ways, this idea of just becoming one with God is another way of giving up on the love that could exist between you and Krishna and God. Don't give up on that. You haven't really tried it yet. You haven't really tested it. Many people like the idea that I can conceive of God as the energy of love, the power of love. But they're not willing to invest that power with its own personality of love, being a personality of love. They don't trust that anyone, any conscious being could be a perfectly acceptable recipient of our own love, and that would reciprocate perfectly with us. They don't trust that. And what is kind of mentioned through the Upanishad and through the different Vedic texts, where it is in trying to invoke a trust in us, that each of us as individual personal beings who have the chance to express ourselves through our free will, we're looking for the highest connection and fulfillment that can happen through that. It's not going to happen by merging ourselves into other beings or even into the great oneness of God. It's not the way to do it. But it's by opening our hearts to connecting the love that can be generated there and connecting with the love of another person. And even though in this world sometimes our relationships are a little troublesome, you know, still we know that finding love will be the key. And what the idea of Upanishad is, direct that aspiration of love as in your connection with the Supreme. That Krishna, this revelation of Krishna, is so sweet, so loving, so perfectly able to reciprocate everything that could possibly fulfill you, that you have no reason to hold back, no reason to doubt, no reason to kind of think that I've got to seek my ultimate fulfillment, happiness, and love elsewhere. I can do it with Krishna. Now, that's the message. But it's tough for us because we're on this platform where we're still not even sure about our spirituality, who we are. Am I this body? Am I spirit, soul, the Atma? You know, how do you know? I've got these desires, these ideas, these plans, and all these worries, and everything else. You know, how do I reach this state of pure love with, between myself and Krishna? How is that going to be possible? Krishna is so amazing. He is the source of everything. He is the totality of everything. There is only Krishna. But we have Krishna and all his energies. All the souls that manifest from him. The whole material worlds that manifest. All the spiritual realms that manifest from Krishna. You know, how can I relate? I'm a little small, and, you know, I'm a little bewildered. And yeah, there is Maya. There is illusion. We are under illusion. We are under avidya, ignorance. Because we're so small that Maya and avidya can overtake us. That's the proof we're not God. Because we are under those influences. But Krishna is beyond all that. And Krishna says, if you'd like help, I'm there for you. If you'd like some help, we can do that. So he's giving us the opportunity to start from wherever we're at. We may wish that we were further down the path. And this gets me into my favorite theological joke from Ireland. You know, if you're traveling in the, you know, away from the towns in Ireland, it gets a little rural, it gets a little villagey, you know, and, you know, you stop someone there, and honestly, they'd say this to you. You might be saying, okay, so how do I get to Killarney? It's a town. And say, no. If I was you, I wouldn't start from here. Meaning that it would be much better if you were trying to get to Killarney, start from somewhere else. But you can't. You can only start from where you're at. That is our spiritual position. I would love to start from a much more devotional, pure, spiritually minded, intelligent position in my spiritual life. I'd love to start further down the road. You know, we read the pastimes of these great devotees and think, wow, wouldn't it be great if I was like that, you know, and as dedicated as they are, you know. Even when I see devotees in the temple engaged in their services, and, you know, you kind of think, oh, it's amazing. We would love to start further down the path. But you can't. You start from where you're at. And that's the exciting thing. Wherever we're at, we can start this path. And we'd start. One of the simplest things that devotee on that day in Belfast did for me was to suggest, well, why don't you try chanting the mantra? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I did. This is what happened to me. Spent 50 years having amazing fun with Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Very grateful for the journey. But still a long way to go, I think. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. We've got a couple of minutes, so.
I think it was something like a retreat.
Oh, the introspection course.
Yes. I have a question regarding it all starts with Shraddha, faith. And you were saying something like, how do I learn to trust that Krishna is a worthy recipient of my love, if I maybe never experienced it in my family, or in the relationship with myself.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is the question I have to you.
Oh, so how do we start building the trust? Little steps. Krishna suggesting that in the Gita, you know. He'd love us to be full-hearted. That's what completely wins Krishna over, when you're just full-hearted. But we're not there yet. So let's do the next best thing. You know, let's dedicate ourselves in some little ways. So even just making a little gesture towards Krishna gets reciprocated. As he says, Yegatam Amprapajante. You know, as we take a step towards him, Krishna's taking steps towards us. And you just start to feel that, and you start to feel, you know, I've got someone helping me on my path. I'm not alone. Krishna's with me. Krishna's helping. And then you start to see how Krishna's, you know, helping you in the way you're dealing with your thoughts, in how you're dealing with circumstances. Just place, the only way to discover trust is you place trust and see what happens. And with Krishna, it's amazing. And then it just builds.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Why does God need emanations if He's completely and perfect? Why does He need us as emanations?
Great
This
point.
question is for God, not for you. I don't think so that you are able to answer completely this question.
Well, I can give you what he says. He wants to have fun. For Krishna, actually, this is a really important and deep point you just raised. If Krishna is that totality, why does he need all these emanations? And in one sense, he doesn't, because he's perfect and complete. So there's no need.
No.
But that doesn't mean there isn't more fun. So Krishna is all pleasure, Satchit Ananda.
But this more fun is
Krishna has
Means
much
also-
more fun with all these emanations. And do you know what Krishna does? Krishna is willing to give all these emanations their own independence, free will.
this,
Because only with free will can you love.
but then it's a big the creation is a big great comedy with much suffering also too.
No, it certainly, then the question is, how are all these emanations using their free will? The majority, frankly, are just very happy, engaged with Krishna, having fun. They're using their natural inclination towards Krishna. And all of you have a tendency towards that. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. You've got a tendency to want to use your independence to do something nice for Krishna. And you actually feel a benefit from that. So that's great. But free will is free will. And free will therefore has to accommodate, Krishna has to accommodate the use of free will when it doesn't want to love either Krishna or others. And the material sphere, as mentioned here, the phenomenal world, is a facility for us to use our free will in ways that just we like. So if there is any suffering and problems in this world, you could say, I blame Krishna for giving free will, but actually it's the misuse of the free will by the individuals that is causing the big trouble.
But we are not free at all. Because if we were free at all, we could just find the door to disappear of this comedy, to get out of this
Oh,
comedy.
you can disappear
We
today.
can just get out of a theater, but not of this comedy.
You can get out of the theater, the comedy, you can get out of everything at a moment's notice. That is just changing the switch within you. Do you want to love yourself? Do you want to think of yourself in terms of being a body in this material world? Or are you now willing to just to see, Krishna, I'm yours? Now that's a big jump. Most of us cannot press that switch to switch from one to the other. It takes time. Because we're talking about love, we're not just talking about knowledge. See, most, if you like, monistic, all one ideas have got this idea that suddenly you're going to go bang and realize God, you know, Hermann Hesse style, you know. But no, actually what we're doing is working on our hearts, trying to, where our hearts have become hardened, closed up to actually giving love. Because when we've tried, it's been a problem. So our hearts have become a little hard. So if you want to get out of the comedy, you're going to have to open your heart to pure love.
Maybe.
Pure love, yeah. And that's just takes a little work. And the whole process of Krishna consciousness is aimed at bit by bit helping you. For those who are maybe highly advanced, highly sincere, it will work very quickly. For some of us, it takes a little longer. But at every step, you feel it working. You actually get proof in yourself that it's working. And it's worth persevering for. And I honestly couldn't imagine what I'd be like or what my life would have been like if that devotee had not knocked on my door and introduced me to Srila Prabhupada in this way. So I'm very, very grateful. And I'm very grateful to all the other devotees who are continuing to manifest this incredible movement of ISKCON, so that constantly we all have the chance to clear our hearts and start feel more love for Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Now we will all be having some nice prasadam. Enjoy the feast. Hare Krishna. Glory to Srila Prabhupada.
His Grace Akhandadhi Srila Prabhupada ki. Thank you very much, Akhandadhi Prabhu, for speaking on this topic of oneness and difference. As you mentioned, giving the joke, even though if one may start in Northern Ireland or Switzerland or India, we are different, but we have the same goal. Thank you very much, Prabhu. And as you may know, our next goal is to honor Prasadam. And so for this, as usual, we will bring the Prasadam here. So I would request you to place the questions in that room, and then we will show you how to sit in the rows. And then in some minutes we will be ready to serve you the food. Prasadam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I thought about maybe, that I need to bring you to my school. That maybe once you can speak there. Yeah, they're very open. They're like into this anthroposophy from Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah.
And Mr. Maharaj came to the school. But Dragon March, and he
Tuned into all of that.
yeah. So what was amazing, all of them